everyone, Peta Hewitt, la-artistino here. Now, a couple of weeks ago I posted a video in which I showed you how to do swatches to swatch out your colours, and in that video I featured a quick shot of one of my art journals as a demonstration of a type of book to use. Since then I've had a lot of requests to see the rest of my art journal, so I've decided to do a quick walkthrough of this particular art journal of mine. Now, this journal is just a cheap cartridge paper journal which I bought from Officeworks. It's sold in Australia by Quill. As you can see, I've left a little stripe on it, and it cost me about $8. I liked it because it's got the hard cover, which makes it a nice looking book, and also the pages lie perfectly flat when you open them, which is very important for me in an art journal. Anyway, I'll show you what I've done in here. This journal is one that I use if I want to further develop a picture and sometimes create a completed picture. It's a bit more between the experimentation stage and the final art stage, so there are some nice finished pictures in here. This first page here I actually did myself. They were both blank. I just got some acrylic ink and diluted a little bit. I picked up a sponge and just sponged it all over the page randomly, and then I put a few strips of washi tape at the bottom of the top. This page here I've gessoed. Gesso is like a white, sort of an acrylic paint, but it's not really acrylic paint. It's used to prepare canvas surfaces for painting, and it's very good for strengthening paper that you're going to put watercolour on. It stops the paint from bleeding through the paper. Here I've gessoed it, and I've just got a set of cheap watercolours and dabbled on everywhere to make this sort of a floral hedge effect. This I did very quick and very quickly. It was just, as I said, it's an experiment, as many of the things in this book are. Here is, I think, probably the first time that I used my Castell Polychromos, and I wanted to see how well that I could, what sort of results I could get out of them. So all I didn't know what to do, so I just drew a whole lot of circles with one of my kids' mats and filled them all in, leaving a little bit of light glow at the bottom. And then the picture looked empty, so I just used some cheap pencils and drew some grass down the bottom. Here I'm testing out the Staedtler 88 fine liner. What else? I think there was another type of fine liner as well, but I just wanted to play with it and do some doodling. So I drew this little mouse character here, and then I drew a kind of a flower, and then just filled in all the background. Bit of fun. This I'm getting a little bit more serious here. As I said, there are some finished works. I was very inspired by Angela Porter. As you know, she has quite a few colouring books out. This I did before I'd ever seen any of the colouring books or the colouring book craze. I think it predated it altogether actually. And I loved her work, so I started reproducing similar pieces using the same kind of ideas as her. So these were inspired by Angela Porter. Both of them were inked just with fine liners and coloured with, well, this one was coloured with the Derwent Inktense pencils, and this one was coloured with the Derwent tinted graphite pencils, which are also water soluble. This picture here, I just put a whole lot of watercolour on and just let it dribble down the page. I wet the page thoroughly and just let it all smush around. And once I had this kind of a look here, I started picking out the details with Faber-Castell pencils and refined them so that this look like this sort of idea became a column here with lots of spots on it. That was a lot of fun. It's kind of like doodling with colour. As you can see, I haven't completed it. This is as far as I got, and I can always go back and finish it one day. I added a little dragon in here just as a focal point. This was just with, I think they were just cheap watercolours. As you can see, they've gone all grainy as they've dried, but I actually like that effect. Here's just a collage-y sort of thing. I started off by throwing down some bits of newspaper over the top of a gesso page. I added some acrylic paint here and there, just slapped it on really, just cheap acrylic paint. I used I think that's a crayon in places, and then I picked out some details with a white gel pen and a black fine liner. Here I'm getting a little bit more serious again with some nice doodle art, which I've coloured in. I think I used some fine liners to colour in those ones. This one I used Derwent Inktense pencils to colour in. More doodly doodles. Here I wanted to splash a colour, so I just pasted in a piece of purple craft card and then did another doodle over the top. And this one I've picked out white with my white gel pen to have a really startling black and white effect on top of the purple for the colour background. Some practicing with just graphite pencils. More sort of practicing with perspective and with graphite pencils. I was actually following a little online tutorial for that. This is just a hodgepodge. This is my very first Prisma Colors set, which just had 12 pencils, and I just did lots of shapes. I scribbled on the page first with a fine liner, and then picked out blocks and pieces and refined them and come up with this sort of interesting artistic mess. It was just fun to do. Nothing planned. Another quick sketch here. I did that while I was having Devonshire tea with my daughter at a local coffee shop. Here's a picture of a fish. This one was also with the Derwent Inktense pencils. As you can see, I did a lot with Inktense pencils before I got the Magical City. This is a great way to experiment for potential backgrounds for your pictures if you don't want to do just flat colour. This was a quick thing that I did. I had a couple of Lyra pencils I was testing, so I just made stripes with them. I didn't go very dense, I just left it very light and loose. This cartridge paper is quite textured, so it left me with a textured finish. I stuck some stickers on of cats that I liked and another piece of washi tape. Then I grabbed a brown Derwent. It was one of the Inktense pencils again, and I drew a line around the cat. And then I took some water and just softened up the line. Then I finished the whole thing with a gold gel pen and did some squiggly marks around it. This one I did with a combination of Sharpies and another alcohol-based marker, which I can't think of. It's another popular one, I can't think of the name. Can't bring it to mind. I'll get back to you on that one. And first of all, I do this picture with fine tip markers, and then I did these little circle things around it. I did quite a few pictures with these, some bigger ones as well. A lot of fun, very relaxing just to do all these circles. And you've got this lovely organic effect. It looks like, oh, I don't know, cells or life forms in a drop of water or something like that. But I just liked it. It was fun. This picture, again, I've got another coloured piece of card in here this time. I don't know if you can see it, but it's blue, and I've stuck that in, and I've done another doodle and coloured it in with Prisma Colors, I think I did with this one. This one, I was using, Neocolor 2 watercolour crayons, or pastels. So I coloured in lightly with that. They started with a pink, went to a sort of an orange. I think I only had 3 colours because I was just testing it, and this lime green down the bottom. And once that had dried, I grabbed my Prismacolor pencils and I drew this floral design on it and coloured it in with the Prismacolor pencils. And after that was finished, I grabbed a fine liner again. I used that to pick out this pattern here, this little frame, and a white gel pen to fill in the little squares. Did the same on this side, so they kind of match even though they're different pictures. This is just a bit of a lark. I used a packet of cheap fluoro pens, you know, the ones that you use to highlighters, so they were just fluoro highlighters. I drew all these shapes in here, sort of oddly, and then I got a fine liner and went all the way around and just drew these very childlike buildings. Really, really, really simple all the way around. Then I got my Prisma Colors and I just coloured them in. So really quick, simple little piece of fun that. This one was another sort of a bigger doodle. This one was a bit more involved. As you can see, it's a more complex and complete doodle. I've drawn first with the fine liners, and again I've coloured in with the Prisma Colors. I really like using the Prisma Colors on this paper. It leaves a little bit of texture, and it just looks really bright. I like it. As for Prisma Colors, here is one of the very first things I did with Prisma Colors. I didn't draw this book in order, by the way. I was sort of all over the place with it. This is a picture that I'd previously sort of made a rough kind of idea of with paints and some cheap wax water-soluble crayons. It didn't look very good, so when I first got my Prisma Colors, this is the very first thing I did with it. I went over and I picked out all the details of the dragon. Spent quite a few hours making it all nice and dense, and it's pretty good, isn't it? I mean, when I'm talking about pretty good, it's a pretty pretty rubbish dragon, but the Prisma Colors itself really impressed me with how dense and bright they could be. Here's another practice drawing. These Do and Art Academy classes are no longer available online. They've closed it as far as I know. But one of the lessons was to make a seashell, or make a picture, I don't think it was necessarily a seashell, with stippling with the graphite pencil, and that's when you just dot, 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 dot to do all the shading. That was fun. This I sort of started, I didn't really complete. This I used the Neocolor 2 water-soluble crayons, and pastels I should say, pastels, crayons, I'm going to have to check the box. I laid down an odd selection of colours, I activated them with the water, and then I went back over it with a fine liner and a black brush pen to bring out some details. I can still go back and finish that, but as far as I'm concerned it's probably as far as I'm going to get with it. Now these two pictures I wanted to contrast using Polychromos pencils and Polychromos pencils on this side and the Prisma Colors on this side. So I drew these two butterfly boys, and this one has been completely coloured with the Prisma Colors and this one with the Polychromos. And as you can see, you can get great results from either pencil. I was happy with both of them. I think it was better, slightly better to get the denser colours with the Prisma Colors, but I liked being able to use the Polychromos. They just seemed to, I don't know, I just had a nicer feeling when I used them. So I generally use them in combination now because they're both good. Here is another page that I've pre-gessoed with the that white paint, as I said, that you can use to prepare canvases or paper for painting. And I've used watercolour pencils here to draw the picture, and I think I've used a couple of Inktense pencils. It's one of those pictures I meant to go back to and doodle over the top with a fine liner to bring all the details out, but I haven't done that yet, and I think I'll just leave it the way it is. Here I was in a very blah mood. I just wanted to do something, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I had this page all pre-gessoed, so I just divided it up into squares and coloured it in with Inktense pencils and activated it with water. Then I went over with some black acrylic paint, did an outline and wrote something to myself in the outline. It just filled in that blah time where I really didn't know what I wanted to draw, but I still wanted to play with colours. This picture was an experiment using twinkling H2Os, again with a pre-gessoed piece of paper. Drew over the top with very lightly with a pencil, coloured it in, and then went over the top again with a fine liner to pick out the details. And then I used a gel pen just to put in some spots and swirls. This is a picture I drew to colour in future. This is just on the plain paper. This is another doodle which I've coloured in. This one was coloured in with Prisma Colors again. This is more of a mixed media art piece. I've started off with a gesso page. I sort of scraped on a good quality acrylic paint using a credit card to get that nice scrapey lines, and then I just started doodling and sticking stuff over the top until I was happy with it. It's always a bit of fun. And here is one of my signature sayings: don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle. And I believe that's attributed to a lady called Jan Acuff. I'm not really sure, but I think that's the name that I saw being attributed to that little saying, and I think it's a good one to remember when you're doing art. Here's another page that I've gessoed, and I've done this with the Neocolor pastels again, activated with water. I found them very difficult to use over a gessoed page because they just kept sliding and slipping away whenever I tried to apply another layer of colour over the top. And I found myself battling to get some nice smooth skin on this character here. It's turned out alright though, but it was a battle and I didn't really enjoy it. I think I used down here, I actually popped some Inktense over the top in places just to make the colours a bit darker. Another play here. I don't know if this page, oh it was, I think this might have been gessoed beforehand. This is just with watercolours. Threw down some watercolours, left it for a while, came back, outlined it with a thicker fine tip than I usually do. That was just a bit of fun. Here's one of these pages where if I've got some leftover acrylic ink on a stamp or something, I'll just slap it on places and leave it as a texture, as something to start a page with, so I can do something over the top. In this case, I had this aqua coloured acrylic which I was using on bubble wrap, you know, the little bubbly stuff you get at the post office, and I just slapped it over the top a few places and left it. And then one day, I think I was waiting at for an outpatient's appointment with my daughter, and I had my Inktense pencils with me, so I just filled it in with this drawing here. I didn't complete it all at the outpatient's appointment, though mind you I could have. Sometimes you wait for 2 hours. And then I grabbed a couple of matching colour fine liners, I think some kind of plum coloured fine liner, just to pick out some of the details, and a brown fine liner there for our eyelashes. So you don't have to start off with a perfectly clean piece of paper. You can do some art with some paper that's already been masked up with something. It actually frees you up a little bit because you're not worried about being perfect anymore, because the paper's no longer perfect. This is a comic book character that I created. You'll see more of him in future videos when I go through some of the artwork that I've done with him. So I won't go into him right now. This is another one of these pages where I've thrown in a lot of acrylic paint. And to start off with, left it for a while, come back, stuck down a whole pile of stuff, left it, come back, and then doodled in it and added details and such with a fine liner and a white gel pen. And I've picked out a couple of colours, bits to colour as well. And again, fun. This is just a mixed media thing. There's a lot of artists actually who do mixed media. You can find them easily online. And I don't do it very often to this degree, but when I do it, I have a lot of fun. Here's a picture that I've drawn to colour in for myself, again using Prismacolor pencils. I went mad with the Prismacolor pencils in this book. I think it just went very nicely. I like the grainy effect that you got with the cartridge paper and the Prismas. Haven't finished this one yet. That's just a quick doodle that I did that I thought I'd just colour in for fun. Predates colouring books. You can see I'm already primed to do colouring books here. Here's another one of those pages that I had some spray. I think this was some kind of shimmer spray that I had on a piece of plastic with holes in it, a stencil. Actually, this was a proper stencil, and I just slapped it on there, left it for a while, and then eventually went back with my Inktense pencils and drew this rose and drew this rather strange looking woman. What do I say about her? I was playing around with a very stylish look, sort of trying to develop a personal style. Didn't turn out, but I liked the way the colours all went down together. This is just a piece of craft paper with a pattern on it that I've put down, and then I've coloured over the top a little bit with Inktense pencils to kind of make it look like it belongs on her. Here's another mixed media. Again, this one stayed just a background for a long time. I didn't know what to do with it. I hated the colours, I hated everything, and then I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll just slap some printouts from the computer on it, and I'll play around with doodling around it with a thicker fine liner and a white gel pen. These are just pictures that I've got from online, from shared sites, and this one here is actually a photograph of my daughter's pet lizard, Syndragosa. And I gave her some butterfly wings. This is another example of how I just throw down some acrylic paint if I've got some left over on my palette. This was from another painting I was doing, just to use up the last little bits. It's there. I might put something over the top, you know, the same way I do these, or it's just left there. May come back to it one day, but if I don't, that's fine. This is just a play around journal. This is another picture where I have used a stencil and sprayed some spray paint through it. I've used some gelatos and did a little frame around the outside of it. Stayed like that for a long time, and then I picked up my Inktense pencils and I drew this face. This is actually my kangaroo gardener that you saw in an earlier picture, and this is sort of like a profile of her face there, and a couple of butterflies. I think that was a stencil, that butterfly, and I've coloured it in with the Derwent Inktense pencils. More Derwent Inktense this time. This is just on the plain paper. This is Myra. Myra is one of my art muses. The characters that sort of live in my brain and inspire me. Sound a bit strange, don't I? Myra is a harpy, and she's an old harpy, which is why she's so wrinkled. She's a lovely person. If you talk to her, she'll tell you everything about the world and her travels, but if she's feeling peckish, she will eat you because she's a harpy. This page, 2 pages here, I gessoed, but I gessoed with a textured gesso, a clear gesso, which is designed for pastels, so it's really rough. It's like sandpaper. I did that, wanted to see what would happen if I applied paint over the top, and this is just a cheap student watercolour set. And then I used Derwent outliner pencil, which you get with the large sets of Derwent Inktense pencils, and some Neocolor dissolvable crayons, pastels. I'm going to have to check that, aren't I? And I came up with this. It was basically, I threw the colours down, I waited to see what sort of picture I saw forming, and here I saw a butterfly and an apple, so I went with it and created a butterfly and apple. And on this one, the splodges turned out into this peculiar flower and a face of a green-haired girl behind. Just fun. Now the paper before I started wasn't pristine either. As you can see, there's texture there from another stencil that I just slapped on there after using it on another piece. This page I coloured black, and I can't remember why I coloured it black, but it stayed black for a long time without anything on it. Oh, I know what it was. It was black gesso I used. I was trying out some black gesso. And I used a stencil to create this raised stuff with some paste stuff that you can put over stencils. You take the stencil off, you let it dry, and it leaves these raised areas. And I coloured those in with pastels, and I used acrylic paint and some water-soluble pastels to draw this star whale moving through the stars. And the little thing that I wrote there is just gliding through her sea of stars. More stencils just slapped down, waiting for something to happen to them. This I did with gelatos. Basically I took my little Faber-Castell gelato, they look like little lipsticks, and I just ran them up and down the page a little bit, and then I used my finger and smudged them a little bit, and then I got a fine liner and just picked out all the details and turned these little smudges and dotty bits of gelatos. I think I used a bit of water on my finger actually to help activate them, come to think of it. But anyway, and then I picked out all the little shapes that I could see forming, and I made this coral bed out of it. And that's a really fun way to doodle, to throw some colour down first. Doesn't matter what watercolours or anything. Then grab a fine liner and just pick out the little things that you can see emerging from all the sort of like the mushy colour. And as I said, this turned out to be a coral garden, and I liked it so much I used it again later on. This I haven't really done anything with. I started to draw something there, but I stopped because I didn't really like it. Here's another coral garden, same technique, just used a few different colours. This is a little message to myself, reminding me that I don't need to know everything. I think that's acrylic paint and those Neocolor 2s again. That I haven't done anything with, I just threw down a lot of paint. This is something I doodled recently. It's just I've used, you know how you can get those packs of different coloured ballpoint pen inks? I had a pack of those, so I drew a tree. Here's another one of those Sharpie pictures where I've drawn a central picture and then I've gone around it and done all these circles, concentric circles in different colours. Stuffed up there, I tend to get little patches of Sharpie on the bottom of my hand and stamp them in different places. But luckily this isn't a finished work, it was just a play. Can't do anything with a Sharpie. And I think this is about the last picture in my book. This is just where I've thrown down some watercolour. I've picked up those coloured ballpoint pens and I've just gone for it and sketched something. And this is a rat girl. So you can see her tail flopping over the end there. I don't think there's anything else in this book. That's about it. The last couple of pages, that these are yet to be filled. I've done most of it. These are my test pages. Always at the end of one of these books I use it to test new art equipment, so new colours and things, see what they do. And that's it. That is a walkthrough from my little quill art journal. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'll be doing a couple more videos with other art journals and pictures that I've done, and I hope you enjoy those too. And until next time, happy colouring. I hope you're enjoying any colouring adventures that you are currently on, and until next time, happy colouring.